So what are the changes that we need to make? So firstly, that jab step is far too wide. So if you follow that line, you'll never be able to plant there. That's impossible. And this is the primary reason why this kicking foot flares open. There's one of two things that you can do here. You can either shift your whole body into a different line, which is going to be very difficult to do, and you'll actually see it in the film. You'll sort of bob and weave from side to side. Or what you're doing is you're landing in a line that's still too far inside of the ball, and then to mitigate that, you turn that foot open so it's facing the ball. So when you go and swing, you're actually steering that foot in the direction of the ball. And that causes sort of a disconnect between where your momentum's heading, like your momentum's going there, and your swing is going to go from this line out there. And then the two of these things have to reconnect. So that foot has to come back to where your momentum's going. And that causes that sort of C shape in your swing. Then that is the direction that your swing is going to go. But your momentum's heading in a totally different direction. And so there's a disconnect between these two things. And we want to bring them together as much as possible. But you want to think about running this way and swinging this way. And the only change in this process is your plant foot facing that way. All that's happening is the plant foot is running in a line and it's planting in the same line. The only thing that's happening is the plant foot is just relocating in terms of where it's facing. Nothing else needs to happen. But in this case, it's simply you're just starting too wide, and as you're getting closer to the ball, because of course, if this line is too wide, then of course naturally this line is going to be too far inside of the ball, and then you've got all of this lateral space to make up, and it's just not allowing you to swing forward and make contact with the ball. You can't. You have to swing laterally to get to the ball. Of course, it's also causing your plant foot to come in because you can't plant in that line. So you're gonna slowly but surely, systematically, sort of lean into that plant foot, and then you just get a little too close. And this is what we're looking at here: is that swing plane being outside the ball, and this is really where where I want you. And the only way you can be there is if you're there from the start. There should be no changes. You should not be trying to get into it, but you should just find those two lines, run on them like railway tracks, and not change direction at all. That is where I'm swinging. I'm swinging towards that building there. My body's still facing this way. And if you watch the follow through, you'll see this foot skips directly forward. It doesn't come left at all. This is what gets you into that trap of turning, which we want to avoid, is thinking where that is and then wanting to do that to get this ball to go there. That's one way that you fall into that trap. The other way you fall into that trap is thinking that this plant foot has to go wider, and you sort of steer it with your body by moving in that direction. When you plant, you'll plant in the exact location that you should be planting. Let's look at that. That's exactly where I was running. And now all my intention is to just continue moving this way with my body and my swing, so that, because we understand that this is going to cause a deceleration and start that rotation. So even though I'm trying to swing this way, it's not possible. I will rotate, but that's allowing me to really get up and through the ball.
So like that video I sent you, that was the best one of the day. And that was about, I think, 46 yards, and that ball would have cleared almost 60. And it made the biggest difference when I was kicking, because I looked a lot better when things started clicking and working.
Yeah. This whole concept is simply about reducing variables and reducing the amount of movements that you have to make in order to make flush contact. You had a problem with this in the past where your kicking foot tends to open up, and that also opens up your body towards the ball, and that relationship between you and the ball changes, and then you have to kind of steer it back. All of those things, you're just doing so much. You don't need to do all of that in order to make great contact. And you're such a good athlete that you can get away with that. And that's the case for a lot of kickers. They rely on their athletic ability instead of their technique, and that can only take you so far.
But what helped out was keeping the right shoulder still. I was thinking about it when I was doing it, and not having as much movement there. It allowed me to be more straight when I was running. So when I planted, I was actually able to plant more straight. It also helped my swing, because like Drew was talking about, and you were talking about on your video and stuff, and the voice recording, it was we want to get the swing more from under the butt rather than around the hips. Both of you want that same thing.
Yeah.
And I think we accomplished that a lot better because we're watching the film and I was actually not rotating the hips as much.
Yeah, and you're starting to understand that the position of the torso is creating a relationship between you and the ball. And as you're
Yeah,
running, if your torso is moving, you're consistently changing that relationship.
correct.
And then, of course,
Yeah.
if you're on that second step, which is what you're doing, if you're kind of angling in towards the ball, your momentum's going there, and then you're trying to get away from it, and that also reinforces that lateral swing.
When I was opening my shoulder, that's what created the wrap, like the hips being involved in the swing more and coming around the ball,
Yeah,
basically like a two-step process rather than just coming from underneath the butt and then just hitting that inside panel. So by
yeah,
keeping this still just to start, just the shoulder, it fixed like two things
yeah,
in one go. It's the smallest little detail, whether it be the plant foot just being a little more in, like
yeah.
it being diagonal, or just your shoulder barely rotating. It can change the entire swing.